A few years ago, hold on a second, a few years ago? Why do I feel so old? Anyway, a few years ago, I made a review series on the Scratch Saga, a 3-part animated show created by and for Scratchers. And then I pretty much never went on Scratch again, besides checking my messages because I still get a little dopamine hit every time I see that orange number. When I stopped going on Scratch like I used to, I didn't feel like I was leaving anything behind. Besides some friends I'd made along the way, there wasn't anything of much value left over from my time on the site. But as I reflected on my time on Scratch, I realized that I had left some important projects untouched, projects that I had pushed aside after talking about the Scratch Saga. Now, they will be pushed aside no more. It's time to uncover some of those old animated series that I was way too obsessed with as a kid, and I think the perfect place to start is Color Divide. Color Divide, besides being an absolutely iconic part of my childhood, is pretty special to me. It was the first project that I saw on Scratch that made me want to join the website. At the time, I desperately wanted to make an animated movie, but I didn't want to do all of that hard stuff like, actually animating something. So I scoured the internet for the easiest to use animation software I could find. And Scratch was one of the first websites that I thought I might have some success with. And one of the main reasons I came to that conclusion was Color Divide. I found it by browsing the top loved projects on the site, and I was blown away. This 15-year-old girl created an entire animated series on her own just using this website? And it was an astonishing animation, no less. From then on, I wanted to be the next Color Divide. The first project I made on Scratch was actually an attempt at an animated series. A very terrible attempt that I'm extremely grateful I kept private, but it's the thought that counts, right? Color Divide was a big inspiration for me, and considering the large number of series on Scratch that muddle its plot or art style, I'm sure a lot of Scratchers agree with me. And when I say I loved Color Divide, I mean I loved Color Divide. I made fan art, memes, fan animations, overpowered Mary Sue OCs, and a 3-part choose-your-own-adventure game series based off of the show. It seemed like everyone on Scratch was absolutely enthralled with this show. I mean, it must have been something incredible to garner this much attention. It was basically the Avatar: The Last Airbender of Scratch. People loved it so much, but when you actually sit down and watch it, it might not be as good as you remembered, to say the least. You're probably thinking, well, of course it's not amazing, it was made by one teenager. And I agree with you. The fact that this thing even got made is an achievement on its own. But to be honest, even by Scratch standards, Color Divide is average. There are many problems with the series that we'll discuss later, but the important thing to address is why it was so popular in the first place. I think I know why. We didn't love Color Divide, we loved what Color Divide could be. The show honestly has a lot of potential, and I think if it was given the professional animation studio treatment, it could be pretty good. Unfortunately, Bubble 103 was, as you'd expect of a teenager running an entire animated series, unable to maintain the show. And it falls flat in a lot of areas where it might just be able to soar. It's the first episode, so you know it's time for some exposition. And boy does Color Divide love just throwing information right at you. The main points of this exposition is that we're in the Kingdom of Aurora, where social ranking is determined by your color, or your magical ability. You earn your color by taking a test at age 12, with red being the lowest rank and violet being the highest. If you fail the test, you are deemed colorless and banished to the wilderness outside of the kingdom. So yeah, don't try to crave the night before for this test. Our protagonist Leia is worried about the test because she doesn't think she has any magical ability, and she's jealous of this girl Zora, who is already at violet level. We know this because she flat out tells us, I understand that these episodes need to have a manageable runtime so that Bubble doesn't give herself carpal tunnel from animating for so long, but you can make this narration just a bit more interesting with a short montage. Show an establishing shot of Aurora, show the people walking around and using their magic, then cut to Leia and the other kids at the orphanage. Have the teacher give the students a short speech about the test since they're taking it tomorrow, and all of the necessary lore can easily be covered in a way that's less obvious than flat out narration. This is is also a great opportunity to establish characters through their reactions to what the teacher says and how they interact with each other. Now we've covered the first minute and a half of the episode, and we've eliminated these awkward lines where Leia literally tells the audience what her character is. At this point, we get introduced to Phage, who transferred orphanages literally the night before the most important test of her life. But anyway, the next morning, Zora and Josh talk about how much they want to pass the test with just the most delightful voice acting.
Best friends forever?
Best friends forever.
The many orphans then go to the testing hall. While they're waiting to be called, Leia and Phage start talking. Or should I say, Bubble 103 starts talking to Bubble 103. There's nothing wrong with double casting, especially with a small scale project like this, but you can't have the same person voice the two protagonists who are going to be constantly talking with each other. Even if Bubble is one of the better voice actors on the cast, this still makes it a lot harder to get immersed in the show when it sounds like someone is talking to themselves. Leia and Phage discuss the test with what I would say is awkward dialogue, but this actually sounds like me trying to hold a conversation for more than 2 minutes when I was a 12-year-old.
Oh, I've never lived anywhere else but this orphanage. So, you nervous for this test? I sure am. Do you have any idea about what it might be like? All I know is it determines our color. Oh.
Accidental realism, I guess. All of a sudden, Phage drops this bombshell that the magicians who run Aurora burned her home down, and now she's going to fail the test on purpose in rebellion. Leia, of course, immediately decides to join her in failing on purpose. You know, she's going to do something that could change her life forever because she talked to this girl for 1 minute. Anyway, the kids all take their tests. Obviously, Zora gets violet, Josh gets blue, and Leia and Phage get banished to the wilderness to endure a slow death as they fail to survive the cruel conditions. I think we know who the real winners are here. And so we leave on this cliffhanger, wondering how Leia and Phage are ever going to survive living alone in the woods. This episode was a nostalgia trip, and the thing that I think has held up the most is the animation. Honestly, the art style is pretty appealing, and there are a lot of unique shots interspersed throughout the show. I think you'll see a common thread throughout this review that Bubble's strong suit is art. The voice acting was... well, it was teenagers voice acting.
Oh.
Although I'll admit that Scratch has raised my expectations for young voice actors, since there are a fair amount of talented VAs on the site, so I feel like Color Divide lowballs it even for Scratch standards. Everything just needs like 50% more emotion and enthusiasm, and then it's good. Despite what my earlier criticisms may have led you to think, I like the story of Color Divide. It's an interesting premise, a pretty cliche one at that, but it holds a lot of potential to explore ideas about society, government, and finding your purpose in life, which are deep ideas that you probably wouldn't expect from a Scratch project. All the while, these ideas are painted with the magical society of Color Divide, and all of the intricate lore laying behind it. Bubble has a great show waiting for her, but she'll have to climb a mountain to reach it, and it's too early to judge her progress. Let's keep moving. Leia and Phage are officially banished, so that means some guy just drops them off in the middle of the woods like yesterday's trash. The girls notice some footprints and follow them to find a woodland society of colorless people. They meet the leader of the society, Lynn, a kindly mother figure who actually isn't colorless, but was born in the wilderness to two colorless parents. It's an interesting backstory that we sadly don't get to hear more about. Lynn explains that monsters roam the wilderness, and so the colorless have to work together to defend themselves. Leia mentions how she heard Lynn ask if Alina had returned, and the conversation about the missing colorless leads to the reveal that Phage's older brother Michael was killed by monsters. Quinn, a fellow colorless, shows Phage a note that Michael gave him. It's a prophecy from a group called the Ancients or something, and it talks about how the one born colorless will die and how a battle will begin at the end of the rainbow. Quinn argues that because he's albino, he is the colorless who will die in the prophecy. Lynn tries to calm Quinn down, but is unable to recover from the most savage line delivery I have ever heard.
It could mean something else other than your death. I would never allow that to happen.
That's what you told Michael, and look where he is now!
Lynn leaves to go look for Alina while Leia and Phage talk about Michael. Phage explains that she told Michael about a colorless boy she saw at the gates, and this caused Michael to become obsessed with exposing the magicians and taking down their totalitarian government. Once Michael was found out as a rebel, the magicians set fire to his home, killing his mother in the process, and then banished him. Phage wanted to fail the test so that she could get to the wilderness and meet with her brother, except now he's dead. So they all cry, Leia acts like an emotional support robot, and the episode ends. Speaking of Leia acting like a robot spitting out dialogue, why is she the main character? Phage has a lot of depth, and I'm sure we could find even more if we dug deeper. She's the one who set the plot in motion by deciding to fail the test. She's the one with the drive to end the tyranny of the magicians. She's got hopes, dreams, and fears. All Leia is doing in this story is following Phage around like a sad puppy. She's just jumping from one decision to the next and hoping it all works out in the end. Leia feels like the side character to Phage's story, but for some reason, we're stuck with her as our point of view. Her character either needs to be fleshed out more or taken out of the spotlight to make room for Phage. There's a lot of good content hiding in this series, it just needs to be uncovered. Honestly, the entirety of episode 2 reveals the best and simultaneously the worst of Color Divide. There is an interesting world with mysteries and large-scale plots hiding within. There are strong characters with the potential to create emotional connections with the audience. And there is eye-catching art that has a magical, classic fantasy look to it. But we all know that it would be pretty much impossible for Bubble to develop each of these aspects to the fullest extent just working on her own. I know I've been pretty harsh in this review so far, but I'm not mad at Bubble or anyone who is behind the creation of Color Divide. I guess I'm just frustrated that these great ideas have gone to waste, because the more I watch this show, despite its awkward dialogue, stiff animation, and messy voice acting, the more I believe that if this was picked up by an actual studio and given the manpower it needed, it could turn out to be a pretty amazing show. I think it was in the back of everyone's minds at this point that this was going to be a huge challenge for Bubble to overcome on her own, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. And so, with the massive plot of Color Divide looming over her, she pushed forward. Clocking in at nearly double the length of the previous episode with a 15-minute runtime, it seemed like Bubble might actually be ready to take on this large-scale storyline. Flashback to 10 years ago, and a doctor is meeting with a woman simply called Mistress, who drops the bomb that she is the ultimate authority of Aurora, controlling the magicians from behind the scenes. Mistress gives the doctor a special assignment with the use of some incredibly evil dialogue, and we're back to present day. The orphanage teacher congratulates the kids on passing their test, although some of them are still shaken up from Leia and Phage's banishment. Some of them just don't care.
It's not like that Leia had friends anyway. Odd girl.
The teacher assures them in Judy fashion that it was all to protect the city, and brushes it aside before moving on to the next topic. Now, each of the kids will apply to academies to hone their magic skills. Josh and Zora worry that their friendship will fall apart if they go to different academies, as Zora will be accepted into a high-ranking school because she's a violet, a school too prestigious for Josh to reach because of his blue status. They're interrupted by a girl who laments losing her bracelet in the testing hall, as it was the last thing her sister gave to her before being banished. Zora decides she will nobly sneak into the testing hall to get the bracelet back. But why? Can't they just ask the teacher to go get the bracelet? I guess the plot demands sacrifice, so it must be done. Zora sneaks into the testing hall, and we get introduced to the best character in the entire series.
What do you think you're doing?
What is there not to love about Drake? He's just so angry all of the time, and his voice actor is always shouting. What an iconic villain. Anyway, my man Drake absolutely owns the test administrator for banishing Phage. Drake reveals the first part of the prophecy from the last episode, which talks about how a rebel orphan tormented by fire will save the City of Colors from a threat. Obviously, he believes this person is Phage, and like a fool, the test administrator banished her. This causes the tester to dare to insult Drake's special mission squad.
You may command a squad of idiots. My special mission squad is not.
And she's pretty much like, oh well, it's not my problem. Lady, you literally banished the chosen one. But anyway, Drake determines that they need to capture Phage as soon as possible before she dies or is found by the colorless. And that's when Zora steps out of the shadows and offers to help them find Phage. And finally, A character just does something. No long-winded explanation of their feelings or internal monologue needed. They just perform an action and we have to decide what it means. Yay! Drake questions Sora to make sure she's loyal to the magicians before letting her into the Special Missions headquarters. And apparently Drake has a son?
You're welcome, Dad.
I mean, they act so similar, I probably should have guessed it. It's revealed that the monsters the Colorless fight are actually Special Mission Squad members in disguise, and Drake convinces Sora that they are doing this to protect Aurora from the big bad Colorless. The team departs on their mission to capture Phage, and the episode ends. Episode 3 is the best episode in the Color Divide series, in my opinion. It's where Bubble starts to find her footing with how to make a good series, and with what she wants to do with the show in general. There are tons of interesting character arcs, plot threads, and mysteries set up in this episode. And while many of these are, admittedly, tropes that have been used multiple times before, they have the potential to become something amazing that can connect with the audience. It was the beginning of something big. But unfortunately, this titan had to fall before it could even get its feet off the ground. The day of reckoning. 12-year-olds across the globe were hit with a shocking announcement. After 3 years and 3 episodes, Bubble 103 was canceling Color Divide. The despair was overwhelming. But it was a cycle that many Scratchers had grown used to. A brave Scratcher decides to give their all and start an animated series. The series is terrible, but to the young minds of Scratch, it's a masterpiece. It could be shown on the BBC even, and then you give the series maybe 5 episodes at best, and it's done. The creator has no passion left for the project, and they move on. But was it all just a waste of time? Color Divide, and all of these other Scratch series that never come to completion. Is all of that effort worth a half-baked product that seems to get worse the older you get? Yes. I think it is. I have a feeling that we may see these Scratchers again one day in the credits of a Disney movie or a Cartoon Network show. Even if the majority of projects on Scratch aren't good, it's a safe place for young creatives to try new things, to figure out what they like and what they don't, to see what they're good at. Color Divide may seem like a tragic story of unreached potential. Captivating characters, intriguing stories, and a world of mysteries were waiting just beneath the surface of the show, but one poor, overworked teenager could never reach that. But with those earlier thoughts in mind, maybe it wasn't such a waste. Bubble 103 has pretty much moved on from Scratch, and she rarely posts. What I have seen from her, though, has shown a lot of improvement in her drawing skills, and I think art has always been Color Divide's strong suit. So yes, Color Divide was pretty bad, and it could never shake the weaknesses that held it back from being something better. But I think the experience was invaluable to its creators and its audience, and I think this is the best way I can explain why, despite all of its oddities, I loved Scratch. In a lot of ways, it was my first YouTube experience. It was a stepping stone to something bigger, and I hope that other Scratchers can experience that same success. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. But do you guys remember, like, the Color Divide Abridged series?
Welcome to Aurora, my
Oh no, I forgot.
people here have weird colors shooting out of their hands. If you have a parent, you're banished
There were so many
outside
orphans.
the wilderness with these curly mountains.
This is so iconic.
Well, I could tell that I'm most likely going to die.
He's like screams the title.
Color Divide!
Hang on, it's time to die.
It's time to die.
All I know is that it's stupid.
What if I don't
She really
live?
said,
They destroyed, they filleted my dad and broiled my mother.
"Believe my dad."
Oh my god, where am I? That is not chocolate milk!
Leia is the best part of the Abridged series.
I don't want to know the stupid truth.
Potato. Well, thank you, Seto. Very cool.